The minister had been shouting for 40 seconds when the duty officer's pager went off in my breast pocket, and I knew before I read the line of text that the rest of the day was going to belong to the Constitution. I am the senior equerry to the household captain of the House of Northrop. I do not ordinarily narrate, I file, I countersign. I sit at the right hand of the captain in the small wood-paneled office on the second floor of the master's lodge, and I move paper from the in-tray to the out-tray, and on a quiet morning, I am the most invisible man in the building. The morning the Minister of the Interior decided he was going to commandeer one of our motorcade vehicles was not a quiet morning, and I was not, at the end of it, invisible. I am going to tell you what happened between 11 minutes past noon, when the minister pushed past guardsman Tobias Wren at the door of the Duchess's escort car, and 7 o'clock that evening, when the mounted gendarmerie closed the last cross street into the ministerial quarter, and the quarter sat sealed for the next 19 hours. I am going to tell it because, even now 6 months on, I have men under my charge who do not understand how fast the institution moves once a guardsman has held his post. I want them to understand. The day was Tuesday, the hour was the noon hour. The setting was the small paved court at the corner of St. Anselm's Row and Chancery Walk, in the heart of the ministerial quarter of our capital, which is the 4 blocks of state offices between the river and the Old Gate. The Duchess of Linebeck, a visiting royal of a friendly fictional house on a 3-day state visit, was being escorted from the Treasury banquet to the river embarkation point, where she would board the state barge for the afternoon ceremony. The escort was a small one. 2 ceremonial cars, 4 motorcycle outriders, and at the curb beside the lead car a single guardsman in red wool tunic, brass buttons, tall black bearskin, white gloves, medals, ceremonial rifle at the rest. Guardsman Tobias Wren of the 2nd Company, 5 years on the post. The best still-stander I had under me. He was standing the way he always stood, eyes forward on the cobbles 10 feet in front of his boots, chest rising and falling at the rate of a sleeping man. The Duchess was inside the Treasury building, 20 paces behind the inner gate, and she was due out at 12:15. At 11 minutes past noon, 3 black sedans came down Chancery Walk from the south and stopped illegally on the painted yellow box at the head of the court. The doors opened. A woman in a charcoal coat got out, a sallow man in a darker one, 2 aides with phones already up, a press handler who began at once to wave at someone I could not see, and then, from the front passenger door of the lead sedan, the Minister of the Interior himself. I will not give you the name his mother used. The official record names him only by his office, the Minister of the Interior of His Majesty's government, a senior cabinet figure of 14 months standing, of the larger party of the governing coalition, with a known appetite for cameras and a reputation, in our building, for treating ceremonial protocol as decoration he was at liberty to rearrange. He looked at the line of motorcade cars at the curb. He looked at the empty space at the head of Chancery Walk where his own ministerial car ought to have been, and was not, because it had broken down at the Treasury underpass at 10 to 12, and his driver was still, at that moment, on the phone to the ministry's transport pool. He looked at his watch. He looked at the lead motorcade car at the curb, and at guardsman Wren beside its rear door, with the white-gloved hand on the rifle and the bearskin tall in the noon light, and the slow, easy patience of a man whose body knew, by long habit, that the next 40 minutes were already planned and would unfold exactly as planned. And then the minister did the thing that, by sundown, ended his career. He walked across the cobbles fast, in the way a powerful man walks toward an inferior he expects to dissolve at his approach. He stopped 2 feet from the guardsman's boots and he said, in a voice loud enough to carry to his own aides and to the small press pool that had been waiting at the corner for the Duchess, "I am the people's minister, my carriage is broken, step aside. I am taking this car." The guardsman did not move. The minister said more loudly, "You open the door, I am the Minister of the Interior, this car is mine now, move." The guardsman did not move, his eyes did not adjust, his white-gloved hand on the rifle did not tighten. He was to look at the brass buckle of the chin strap and the wool of the tunic and the fur of the bearskin and nothing else. I was, by this time, walking fast and on the inside, from my position at the inner door of the Treasury where I had been waiting on the Duchess. I came out into the noon light and I saw the press pool come up at the same instant, 6 photographers, 2 news cameras, a young woman with a tablet and the lanyard of the wire service, and I saw the minister's senior aide, the woman in the charcoal coat, lift her phone and begin deliberately to film. The minister's own face was in the high-definition record of that moment, the face of a man who had decided, somewhere in the previous 90 seconds, that the cameras were going to work for him. He turned half to the cameras. He pointed at Guardsman Wren. He said, in the carrying voice of a speech he had given many times before in many different rooms, "This is what is wrong with this country. A car sits idle at the curb while a minister of the crown is left at the side of the road. The people's business waits, the people's business, and this man, this dressed-up doorman, will not step aside for the work of the elected government." The guardsman did not move. The minister stepped forward and put the flat of his hand on the guardsman's chest and pushed. I had reached the cordon at that moment. I will tell you what I saw with my own eyes at a distance of 3 meters. The guardsman did not yield, his back foot did not slide, his shoulders did not give. The minister's hand met the wool of the tunic and the metals beneath, and the guardsman's body absorbed the push the way a stone wall absorbs a thrown shoulder, which is to say, not at all. The minister, who was a man of average build and uncommon vanity, did not expect this. His own hand bounced. He stepped back 1/2 pace by his own surprise. And in that half pace, in front of the 6 photographers and the 2 news cameras and the wire services tablet, the entire calibration of the moment changed. He recovered, he had to, the cameras were there. He turned to them and he said with a strained attempt at the same carrying voice, "Did you see that? Did you see?" He laid hands on a minister of the crown. He had not, the hand had been the minister's, the cameras had it. I crossed the cordon line, I did not speak to him. I am not authorized to speak to a member of the cabinet on the street, and even if I had been, the captain's standing instruction in such moments is that the equerry's voice belongs only to the institution, and the institution speaks in writing. I went past the minister at the polite distance prescribed by protocol at his elbow, eyes forward, and I stood at the guardsman's shoulder, 1/2 pace back and to the right in the formal position of the second on a post, and I said quietly to Wren alone, "Hold." He did not answer. He did not need to, he had been holding before I had crossed the court. The minister looked at me, he looked at the line of cars. He looked at his aides and at the press pool, and at the broken sedan still at the Treasury underpass that he could not, for the next 40 minutes, repair. He pushed past me, deliberately, his shoulder making contact with my shoulder, and he reached for the handle of the rear door of the motorcade car. The door was locked, of course the door was locked. He pulled at it twice and then he turned and he said to the press pool, in a voice that had lost some of its carrying timbre, "I will be filing for obstruction. I will be filing today. The names of these men will be on my desk by 3 o'clock. He turned and he walked, with the woman in the charcoal coat and the press handler at his elbow, back across the cobbles to his 3 black sedans, and they got in, and the sedans pulled away east on Chancery Walk, and the press pool stayed, and the Duchess came out at 12:16, 1 minute late, and the motorcade departed on schedule for the river. Guardsman Wren stood his post until relief came at 1 o'clock. He had not moved his eyes from the cobbles 10 feet in front of his boots the entire time. That was the public part. The institutional part, the part I am writing this account to describe to you, began at 12:18, when I came back through the inner gate of the Treasury and went up the stairs to the 2nd floor and into the small wood-paneled office, and laid the duty officer's pager on the desk in front of the household captain and said, "The Minister of the Interior has just attempted to commandeer the Duchess's escort car." He laid hands on Wren. 6 cameras. The captain did not look up from his pen. He said, "Have we the footage?" I said, "We have the press pools, the minister's aides, and our own gate camera." The captain said, "Telephone the Lord Chamberlain. I will be writing the letter." That was 12:19. I will give you the cascade in the order in which it happened, because the cascade is the point of this account, and because the cascade is what I want my younger men to understand. The institution does not retaliate. The institution responds. The difference is the whole of it. At 12:25, the captain's letter, 3 paragraphs long, addressed to the Prime Minister's principal private secretary, copied to the Lord Chamberlain and to the permanent secretary at the Interior Ministry, left the building by courier. The letter described, in dry plain language, what had occurred at the corner of St. Ansel's and Chancery Walk at 11 minutes past noon, attached a copy of the gate camera footage, and invited the Prime Minister's office to advise on the security implications of a sitting minister attempting to physically remove a member of His Majesty's household guard from a state escort post during the active transit of a visiting royal personage. The phrase in that letter that I have not forgotten was security implications. It is a phrase that in our trade opens a door. At 12:40, the permanent secretary at the Interior Ministry rang the captain's office and asked in a strained voice whether the matter could be handled by private apology. The captain said courteously that the matter was now between his office and the Prime Minister's, and that he would be guided by the Prime Minister's response, and that the permanent secretary's call had been logged. He hung up. At 12:52, the commandant of the palace constabulary rang. The commandant said only, "We have seen the gate footage, the quarter is being reviewed." The captain said, "Thank you, commandant." The commandant said, "We will be visible." That was the whole of the call. At 1:15, the first of the mounted gendarmerie, 4 troopers in dress blacks on the chestnut horses of the constabulary's ceremonial squadron, came up St. Ansel's Row at the formal pace and took station at the 4 corners of the small paved court where the minister had stood. By 2, there were 16. By 3, every cross street into the ministerial quarter was held by a pair of mounted troopers. The official designation on the Constabulary Situation Board was Heightened Security Review Indefinite. The press pool, which had not in fact dispersed, filmed it. At 1:30, the Lord Chamberlain's office released a 1-paragraph statement that an incident had occurred during the transit of a visiting royal personage, that the matter had been referred to the Prime Minister's office, that His Majesty's household had complete confidence in the conduct of its guard. The statement named no minister. It did not need to. The footage was already on every news desk in the country. At 2 o'clock, the minister's office issued a statement drafted, "I have it on the authority of a colleague at the Cabinet Office, under direct telephone supervision from the Prime Minister's principal private secretary." The statement said that the minister regretted the morning's misunderstanding, that the minister held the household guard in the highest esteem, and that the minister looked forward to discussing security protocols with the Lord Chamberlain at the latter's convenience. It was, by the measure of these things, a surrender flag. At 2:30, the platform footage of the minister's hand on the guardsman's chest passed 11 million views. At 3:15, the chairman of the larger party of the governing coalition, a man whose own seat had been won in the last election by a margin of 400 votes, was photographed entering the Prime Minister's residence by the side door. He stayed for 22 minutes. He left without comment. At 4 o'clock, the minister's office issued a second statement, withdrawing the first. The minister, the new statement said, regretted his earlier conduct without qualification. The minister apologized fully and personally to the guardsman and to the household. The minister recognized that he had acted in disregard of long-established protocol and in a manner unbecoming of his office. At 5:10, the Prime Minister's office announced that the cabinet portfolio at the Interior Ministry would, with immediate effect, be reassigned to a junior colleague pending a review of responsibilities. The minister's name appeared in the announcement only once, in the past tense. At 6, the gendarmerie had not withdrawn from the quarter. At 7, the last cross street, the small lane at the eastern corner behind the old excise office, was closed, and a single mounted trooper took station at its mouth, and the ministerial quarter sat sealed on the Constabulary Situation Board as a matter of heightened security review. Civil traffic was rerouted. The minister's office on the second floor of the interior building sat dark. He had been escorted from it at 5:30 by his own permanent secretary, with the courtesy of an unmarked exit. The quarter remained sealed for 19 hours. It was reopened by the constabulary at 2 the following afternoon, after the formal apology had been delivered in person at the Lord Chamberlain's office, and the new ministerial appointment had been gazetted, and the press cycle had moved, in the way the press cycle moves, to the next thing. The minister did not return to cabinet. He held his backbench seat for the remaining 11 months of the Parliament and stood down at the dissolution. His name, when it is spoken now in the building, is spoken as a small cautionary noun. Guardsman Tobias Wren stood his post until relief at 1 o'clock on the Tuesday, drank 1 cup of tea in the guardroom, made his report in 3 sentences to his sergeant, and attempted unauthorized boarding of a state escort vehicle at 12:11 hours, resolved without incident at 12:15 and went home at 4. He was back on the same post at noon the following Tuesday. He stood it the way he stood every post, eyes forward, white-gloved hand on the rifle. The fur of the bearskin tall in the noon light. The slow, easy patience of a man whose body knew, by long habit, that the next 40 minutes were already planned and would unfold exactly as planned. I asked the captain, 2 days after the quarter reopened, what he would have done if Wren had moved. The captain looked at me across the wood-paneled desk for a long moment, and he said, "He was not going to move, that is what we hire." Then he said, "If he had moved, the cabinet would have stood. He did not move, therefore it fell." I have thought often in the month since about the proportion of that sentence. The minister had pushed the guardsman with the flat of one hand, he had reached twice at a locked door, he had spoken in the carrying voice of a politician perhaps 300 words, the guardsman had stood and held and given him nothing. And the institution, which is not a person, which is not even a building, which is only the slow, steady habit of a great many small offices doing, each, their narrow correct work in the order they are arranged to do it, had moved, by the end of the day, to defend the man who had not. It is a thing my younger men do not, on the day they first take the post, fully understand. They think the discipline is the point. They think the iron stillness, the held eye, the unmoved hand is the work. It is not. The discipline is only the door. What stands behind the door is what they are guarding, and what guards them in turn, the slow, patient, lawful weight of the Constitution, which arrives, when it arrives, in horseshoes on cobblestones and letters on courier paper, and the careful, unhurried closing of a city quarter at the end of a Tuesday afternoon. I tell them now when a new man takes the post for the first time. I tell him the story of the Tuesday at St. Ansel's Row, and the minister with his 3 black sedans, and Wren's white-gloved hand on the rifle, and the quarter at Dusk. I tell him, stand your post, hold, give them nothing, we will do the rest. That is the bargain, that has always been the bargain. The man who keeps his end of it has, behind him, the whole long disciplined weight of the institution he serves, and it will move, when it must, with the unhurried inevitability of state machinery, to put the world right around him while he holds. Guardsman Tobias Wren held, the institution moved, the quarter was sealed by Dusk. That is the whole of it.